The bill would raise the vehicle weight class for all classes of vehicles, including the minimum tax for said vehicles, and raise the annual registration fee for all vehicles. Okay, may I have a motion to approve Bill 85 and file all related communications? It's been moved by Councilmember Kern and seconded by Councilmember Elegant. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Ford?
Ms. Crawford, would you and Ms. Sacco please come forward? We heard testimony from Mr. Reese today regarding the illegality of what we're doing based on the amount of money that we're asking for. And I would like you to comment on that, or if you don't feel comfortable, maybe we could have Corporation Counsel comment on the fact that, according to Mr. Reese, we are asking for more money than is allowed by state law.
Nancy Crawford, Director of Finance. Our vehicle registration fee, much as that fee that is charged in every other county, is implemented by our Hawaii County Code. And furthermore, the separate tax that he has expressed concern with on vehicle disposal tax, or vehicle disposal fee, I'm sorry, it's not a tax. Both of these are fees that are in our Hawaii County Code and were established, based on discussion at the time, and have subsequently withstood the course of law in terms of a case that was brought before the court. Also, the council has previously received an opinion on this topic that I would recommend. I would certainly refer you to privileged communication from Corporation Counsel in May of 2012. I mean, beyond that, I'd rather not go into that because that is privilege.
Thank you. Mr. Sheet, I'm going to ask you to come forward. I'm sorry, what?
Mr. Masuda.
Oh, Mr. Masuda, please come forward. Thank you. I apologize. I'm a little uncomfortable with just stating there was a lawsuit without explaining the contents of the lawsuit. I'll wait till Mr. Masuda checks in with us. Mr. Masuda, please state your name and your position.
Craig Masuda,
Title, I should say.
Craig Masuda, Deputy Corporation Counsel.
Thank you. Mr. Masuda, I'm a little bit uncomfortable when we're raising taxes, fees, whatever you want to call them, and we say, well, there was a case, and we don't discuss the case in public, and there was a privileged communication. We're not going to tell the public what that was about when we're about to possibly raise these fees. The question I put to Ms. Crawford was based on state law, not county code, based on state law, are we allowed to raise these vehicle registration fees beyond what is in the state code?
I believe so.
Statutes, excuse me.
Yes, I believe so.
You believe so?
That's correct.
I'm sorry, that's not giving me any feeling of comfort at all. Are we allowed to raise these fees higher than what is in the state statutes? Yes or no?
I believe so. That's correct.
Okay, that's not answering my question. Second thing regarding...
Ms. Ford, if I may. To the best of my knowledge, you can raise the fees, although if you would like us to revisit that issue, we will research it again.
I would appreciate you researching it again. The weight tax increase, based on the handout, which is communication number 289.1 from Ms. Crawford, the vehicle registration fee is identified as a fee on here, but the weight tax is listed as a tax. Are we going higher, any one of the three of you, is the weight tax higher than is allowed by state law?
No, because
Ms.
what happens
Crawford?
is I'm sorry. Do you want me to respond?
Go ahead, Ms.
Okay, there's a kind of a
Mr.
delay.
Masuda, I'm
so-
going to let you,
Yeah, well, there's, according to state law, council is to decide what the vehicle weight tax is. It is a tax authorized by the state.
okay, thank you. That's very clear. All right, and then lastly, I would like Ms. Crawford to explain where this money goes, because I did have a discussion with her. I know that it goes into the highway fund, but how is it distributed within the fund? Because there's a lack of clarity. I got different answers from department heads.
I'll start and speak, but I think you also spoke with Ms. Sacco, and so, you know, she may have, based on that conversation, she may have other input. But, yes, these weight tax goes to the highway fund. And the highway fund, and in that fund, can be used for highway road maintenance and transportation operations. And so we have, for instance, our mass transit system is partially funded in the general fund and partially funded in the highway fund.
Okay, yesterday when I talked to, I think it was Deanna, okay, I explained that when you look at Communication 289 on the transmittal portion, it says the proposed amendment would provide additional.
They are related to the overall operations of vehicle registration and licensing and related costs. So those fees go to the general fund, and they were, this was anticipated in putting together our budget. By law, all of weight tax goes to the highway fund, as do two other sources of revenue, fuel tax and franchise tax. Those fund the highway fund and are distributed annually in their budget based on the needs of the entities who are funded through the highway fund. So I think it is difficult to tell you this year or in future years that, you know, there is not a percentage allocation method, and so that's the part of, you know, the necessary flexibility of being able to budget in that fund, and the fact that it does cover both, you know, highways, traffic, and transit operations. Is that responsive to your question?
Well, it explains that the money goes into the highway fund and it's used at the discretion of the administration in whatever manner they deem best. Okay.
That's, yes, we feel that's our job in setting the budget.
Okay. This is my opinion. It's my job as a council member to be able to explain this to the public, and there's no transparency in this, so I cannot explain it to the public. And I've received some complaints that, you know, one question that came up was, what are we getting for this money? And I cannot explain what we're getting for this money. Mr. Lee's telling me he's not getting any of it, and you're telling me that the budget shows increased money in your vehicle registration and licensing division. I understand that, but I have no idea exactly how much money this is going to raise, and I really can't say with any confidence what the public is going to get for this increase, and that concerns me.
I would say that the transparency lies in the budget. If you look at the highway fund, you will see the various sources of revenue, and you will see the uses of that revenue in their balanced budget. And that is what the public is getting for this increase.
So the problem that I'm seeing, though, is if I refer the public or myself to the budget, which I know how to read, and I can say X dollars are in the budget, it's not telling me that with this increase that we're going to repave X number of miles of road. It doesn't tell me we've got 3 new people in your department. It doesn't tell me anything. It's there in the budget, and I cannot expect the public to understand the budget the way we are supposed to. So that's my concern, and I'm going to yield.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just make one
sure.
other brief
Go
response,
ahead.
which is just that, as in the general fund, we have multiple sources of revenue. Obviously real property tax, our TAT, a lot of other sources of revenue, and we do not allocate them specifically to specific expenditures other than that those budgeted expenditures are available for people to see as well. But there is not a direct allocation, and the same is true in the highway fund.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Kern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a, Al
joking.
already, okay? Oh, tough decisions we have to make along the way. What I do know is that so many of the folks that I've talked to, we are demanding more services, more roads paved, higher level of service. It's hard to meet that level of service without having the revenue to do that. What will disappoint the folks that I've been talking to is that if we bring the revenue in and it's not spent in an accountable fashion, it's not going to work. Again, as I've said in the past, I feel like the administration has been doing a really good job of spending the money in an accountable fashion. I think it needs to be pointed out that the vehicle registration fees haven't been increased since 2002. Even with this increase, we'll still be lower than every other county, Honolulu, Maui, and Kauai County, all of them. With the weight tax, that hasn't been increased since 2004, and with the minimum tax, it'll basically set it to the same standard as the other counties, as well as the increase of or not the minimum, but the other tax or freight tax will bring it to basically the same as Kauai County and less than the other counties, while Kauai County is quite a bit smaller. And we are so much more geographically challenged with all the roads that we have. It's still not going to go as far as we would actually want it to go, but it's going to be a step in the right direction. Again, my goal is to do whatever we can to help boost our economy, make the island a better place, and through the boosting our economy, it takes jobs, and if we're able to increase revenue, we're able to increase jobs, which those jobs have a multiplier effect. So while there's people doing more construction work and there's roads being paved, they're out there spending their money in the community, they're paying their yard service, they're going to the gas station, they're going to the stores. That money is going back out in our community. That's one nice thing about keeping the money in our county, is that it is actually staying in our county. So these haven't been raised in a really long time. This is a really, really tough decision for me, but after thinking about it and talking with people, I'm going to support this, and I'm going to just work so very hard to make sure that we're spending our money in an accountable fashion, as we have been, and to do everything that we can do to increase our overall value without burdening anybody, and as we've talked about in the future, being able to maybe bring things down a little bit. But it's all a balance and tough decisions that we have to make, and we have to do this in order to meet the needs of the people of the Big Island. So with that, I'll yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Onishi?
Thank you. Nancy, I guess when we're going through the budget, you folks did mention about this tax increases, right? And I remember you mentioning that some of the funds would be going for more employees. You guys were going to hire some staff, right? And then also you folks mentioned like what else the money was going for. Maybe you can explain.
In this particular year's budget, I mean, again, yes, we're trying to make improvements in our vehicle registration and licensing division, which is, part of where those funds, that's what that's related to. For the weight tax increase, for this year going forward, the point I was trying to make is that for any given budget year, we're going to pool the funds that come to the highway fund and allocate them as best determined as necessary, as shown in the budget, for covering the various services that fall under the highway fund. In this case, the service that would show the greatest increase is in the mass transit system, because we are adding positions there, and we are adding extra routes, which translates into fuel costs, the driver contracts, thank you, Deanna. The other point, though, is that the other divisions, I mean, it wasn't only going to mass transit. There were also increases in both traffic and highways budgets as well. And that, I can't point to a specific way that those funds are spent, but it's there to help support all three of those.
Yeah, and I do remember, like, you mentioning that at the budget hearings, and that was just part of how this package was for the upcoming fiscal. Like, it was like property tax, the fuel, the weight tax, and so forth, and then like the bus fare and so forth, like that, right? And then PNR was going to do their increases on their users' fees and so forth, and that was going to help generate more income to the county for this upcoming budget. And so I think you folks were justified, and you folks did explain to the councilmembers prior, of we passing the budget. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Iligan.
When I was thinking about the vehicle weight registration, I agree with Councilmember Kern, because when you look at the vehicle weight tax, it goes straight to the highway fund, and the only way to fund it is either fuel tax or the franchise tax that you mentioned. And for mass transit, it's costing around $7 million just to operate the mass transit system in this whole entire island. And how many buses? Like 55 buses, or somewhere around that number. And you're also, from my district, my perspective, when I was talking to the director for mass transit, 40% of the riders come from Puna. And I was thinking, what's the fairest way to actually fund the mass transit where we need it the most? And when I compared the vehicle weight tax compared to the fuel tax, it's actually, when you look at the fuel tax, who pays the most? It's people from Pohoa, Kau, Hamakua, people who have to travel for long commutes. And they would actually have to pay more in the fuel tax if we were to raise that. If you look at the vehicle weight tax, it shoulders upon everybody in the whole island. It's a better alternative than the fuel tax, because it looks like we are trying to fund this mass transit system, and the expenses is just going up. I believe it was around $4 million 2 years ago, then it went up another $1 million, and now it's up to $7 million. And like Councilmember Kern mentioned, we currently, Hawaii County, in the vehicle weight tax is $6. It's half of what Kauai, Maui, and Oahu is. We're just playing catch up. And we have to do our share of paying for these services. And as a Puna council member, I will support this vehicle weight tax. And I will add in additional $2 million to help subsidize some of our services, especially the mass transit. And I just wanted to urge my colleague to vote and support this bill or this resolution. And thank you.
Councilmember Willie?
Hey, Nancy, can you tell me approximately what amount of additional income all of these increases will bring? I mean, maybe it's there. Just
Yes,
approximate.
no, we have, and on that attachment sheet that has some summary information for you, just to let you know, that's there too, in case you need it, if you're speaking to your constituents. But for the 2013-14 budget, vehicle registration increase would generate about $895,000 for the general fund. And the weight tax increase is reflected in the budget and at $1.8 million. 1.8 million, $1.88, I guess, so if I'm rounding up, $1.9 million going to the highway fund.
Okay, thank you. And did you clarify that Warren Lee said that this wouldn't go into road maintenance? Is that true? I mean, is that none of this would go into maintenance of roads?
You know, all of the budgets there increase, as we mentioned, they each had budgetary increases. This isn't specifically directed towards additional road service. The largest increase there was in a mass transit budget, and so in general, I think it's fair to say that the majority in this upcoming year, the majority is going to mass transit system.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember, any other Councilmember in the first round? Okay, Councilmember Ford?
Thank you. Nancy, over the years, I've heard a percentage number bandied about, and it may not be an exact number, but that 30% of the vehicles on our roads are unregistered vehicles. And whatever the number is, whether it's 30% or 20% or even 15%, whatever the percentage is, from those particular vehicles, we are not collecting registration fees at all, or certainly not a weight tax, because they're not registered. We can't apply the weight tax. Is that correct? If an unregistered vehicle would not be, obviously, paying vehicle registration fees or weight tax, correct?
That's correct. Unregistered vehicles are not contributing at all. I would say that it is impossible to know how many unregistered vehicles. Many unregistered vehicles are no longer on the road. They may be in our motor vehicle system, but people have not come back and renewed registration because they're no longer functional.
Okay, well, I don't know. I believe they're in your system. I don't know if they're not on the roads, because I keep hearing this number come up, and I think it's a high number. However, what is the Finance Department doing to determine whether or not these vehicles are on the road and collect registration and weight taxes from these people?
Enforcement of motor vehicle registrations is not part of the Finance Department's responsibilities. I would say the Police Department is who is determining, they're identifying unregistered vehicles. But that's the purpose behind having the registration stickers. And in our new system over the last year, we were talking about, I think there was a comment about people stealing registration stickers and putting them on their plates. However, those stickers now actually are printed with your plate identification on them. So that removes that temptation to try and make your car look registered by taking the sticker off and putting it on your own car.
Okay. So I think that's a great idea. I'm glad you're implementing that. But that doesn't answer the question. I mean, you've said it's up to the police to enforce the unregistered vehicle thing, but we've got, I don't know, what percentage of vehicles do you have in your system that haven't come in to register their vehicle and pay the weight tax? Do you have any idea what that percentage is?
I do not know that number, and as I said, in addition, I wouldn't know what number of those are actually on the road, because I am aware of, from talking with certain taxpayers, of vehicles that, while they may have failed to register them as abandoned or destroyed, so that we don't have a record of that in our system, that's just what has happened, and that's why they've stopped registering.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the number 30%, one place that it comes from is when we arrest a person for DUI, approximately 30%, might be something between 25 and 30%, are in unregistered vehicles. And it seems to me that our police department is quite overburdened dealing with those types of issues, and I would like to see the finance department doing something about it, even if it's only sending a letter out to the last owner and saying, where is your vehicle and why is it not registered? It seems to me if we've got 30% of DUIs as unregistered vehicles, they're not contributing to the needs of the county. Now, I understand why, because if they're DUI, it's probably not the first time, and they probably can't get a license either. But they're obviously driving, or they wouldn't be stopped by the police for DUIs and being arrested. So if this money was going to deal with some of those issues and get those cars and those people off the street, I could sort of see this. But I'm not seeing a correlation between what we're doing here and the outcome. Go ahead and comment.
I would comment that I think if you look at the percentage of unregistered vehicles that are stopped for DUI, it is probably not appropriate to generalize that to the overall population of the island. That I think they are a distinct group, and as you mentioned, perhaps more apt to be left. The other comment I wanted to make is we have 170,000 registered vehicles, and our staff, I think, does a tremendous job in managing the registration of those vehicles, and worst case of any other vehicles that were in there previously, I think would require additional staffing and manpower. We would have to determine whether or not that's actually cost effective to do. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, the figure of 30% for sure is coming in for the DUIs. And as I stated in the beginning, I keep hearing the number 30% just in the general population. And I said I don't know if it's an accurate number. It may be 15%. So I'm not extrapolating. I'm just asking you what the number is, and you said you could not give it to us. I've accepted that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. I think on this one we should do a, Madam Clerk, I'm going to call for a roll call on this vote. Please. Thank you.
Messier. Aye.